All right, everyone. So in this video here, I just got this in the mail today, and that is the new ROG Ally X. Now, the thing with this one versus the original is this is not like a ROG Ally 2 or like a true sequel to it. Think of it more like the Pro version of an existing console. So say, for example, like the PS4 is like the original ROG Ally versus the PS4 Pro, or like the Xbox One, going from the Xbox One to the Xbox One X. That's essentially what this is. So this is like a souped up version, but also like a refined version of the original. And I'll be honest with you, the ROG Ally has actually been the portable gaming device that I've actually been using the most. I've actually used the ROG Ally more than my Switch lately. I've certainly had a lot more hours put in than like the Steam Deck and all the other devices out there. So while going from, say, like upgrading, not from what I've been hearing, is actually not really a drastic jump that is worth spending the money on it. But there are a couple of things about this that, for me personally, actually does make it worthwhile to go ahead and upgrade. So let's go ahead and cut this open. It's completely wrapped in this plastic film, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the plastic off. And you can kind of see the back of this thing here. And you got the two stickers here, one on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and break the seal. So obviously the big difference is this time around they made it black instead of white. I'll be honest with you, actually it would have been kind of nice to have the option of having different color choices, but I can kind of understand why they did it this way. So here we go. And I actually do have the original ROG Ally. So we're going to go ahead and see the difference here, but here's the system. Let's see what's in here. The power brick. If I remember correctly, this should be the same one. I will double check, but I think it is the same one. It's still the same 65-watt power supply. From my understanding, this actually supports higher wattage charging than the supplied charging brick. I want to say there's something else in here. Yeah, there's definitely something in there. Hold on here. That's just filler. So let's go ahead and open this up, see what's inside. All right, this is literally just documentation. So I'm just going to go ahead and just throw this back inside here. And same thing with this. I'm just going to toss that back in there. So in here is the kickstand. Well, not really a kickstand. Oh, I actually include two this time. So it's basically the same concept like the original version. They're just like these paper things, and you can literally just prop it up on it. You don't need both, but yeah, you can do that. Cool. So now that I have this out, let's go ahead and put this away and take a look at this. Now this is going to be more like a initial impression. I'm not really going to turn it on this video just because one of the first things I'm going to do is actually open this up and change out the SSD, because this actually comes with a 1 terabyte drive built in, but I actually went and bought a 4 terabyte drive because one of the big changes when it comes to the storage is it uses the regular size SSDs. So it doesn't use that small version like the like it uses for the Steam Deck. So first impressions holding this, it is actually a little more comfortable. Now, oh yeah, the sticks are stiffer too. That's something I've read about, that these thumbsticks has more resistance to them, and I kind of like it better this way. So obviously on the top here, you got 2 USB-C ports. One of them is Thunderbolt 4, if I believe correctly. And this just adds more compatibility for external GPUs. You got the power / fingerprint sensor, micro SD card slot still on the top, volume, headphone jack, nothing really on the bottom. And of course your back buttons, they are a little different. So one thing I do notice too is that with these back buttons, they kind of rearranged it and actually moved it further out so that when you're holding it, it's not really in the way. So if I actually grab my original one. All right, so a couple of things when it comes to the physical differences is that obviously one big thing is that this is now black versus the original white. Also, if you can also tell, is that they actually rounded this off a little bit more versus having this slant right here. Now, for me personally, I never really had an issue of this being like uncomfortable to hold or anything. So holding this versus holding the ROG Ally X, one big difference is that because they rearranged the back buttons, they're not like in the way when you're holding it normally. So you kind of have to like move your middle finger over to actually use it. So you have to you basically have to know that you're going to be using it and forcefully move your fingers over to it. So when you're holding it, it kind of looks like this in the back. So you kind of have to like stretch your fingers out and touch these. So that is one thing to note versus the original one. When you're just normally holding it, you're going to have your fingers basically resting on these all the time. For me personally, I never really had an issue with that. But I know some people were having issues like accidentally pressing them. So this was more like, you know, getting feedback from the community. I do like the stiffer sticks. Another thing too, they actually changed how the D-pad is. So trying to like roll my finger on the D-pad versus the original. So I think underneath it seems similar, but the top portion, the actual D-pad itself is different. So this had like a shiny black to it, whereas the corners, or the 4 corners of the D-pad, is shiny plastic. but the D-pad itself, you know, has the more of the matte finish on it. This D-pad, the way it looks, actually reminds me of the like the Sega Genesis style D-pad. So a couple of things too is that the screen itself is exactly the same, so there's no screen quality difference. I do hear that the speakers are a little bit louder and a little bit clearer than the original, but it's also not a drastic difference either. Besides that, pressing the face buttons seems a little stiffer, but it could just be that I press these down quite often, that maybe they just got worked in a little bit more, but these do feel a little bit stiffer as far as these buttons here. They pretty much seem the same. The other difference I will say is that the triggers do somewhat feel a little bit different. So it has more of a lip coming out, whereas the original one is a little bit more flat. I mean, to me, both, they feel fine. But it seems like for the resting position, these feels a little bit better. I think functionality, they're going to be pretty much the same. So, like I said before, this is more of like a pro version. So it's going to be like a more refined version of the original hardware. A couple of things too. Actually, you know what? How about the weight? So holding this, now holding this. The Ally X is supposed to be a little bit heavier, but not really that much. And honestly, when just using it, it's not really gonna, to me, I don't think this is really gonna matter. So yeah, yeah, that's just an initial first impressions. Actually, what is the thickness? Okay, the thickness seems about the same, but you can kind of see like in the back here, you know, the original one, while, you know, it had the, you know, there is a little bit of a grip. The Ally X is more pronounced, but not as much as like a Steam Deck. So keep that in mind. If you're expecting the Ally X to feel more like holding a Steam Deck, it's not. The Steam Deck's handles are more pronounced than these, but this kind of sits in between. So I think, you know, trying to keep it somewhat portable-ish versus the original. Even the cooling system. Now, this one does have more vents than the original Ally, but I don't really know if it's really going to make a difference. But as far as the tops here, one thing you are going to lose is the proprietary connection for those XG mobiles. So if you were using one of those for your original ROG Ally, it's not actually compatible with the Ally X, but this one does offer more compatibility, so keep that in mind too. Plus, being that you have two ports up here now, allows you to, say, charge the device and maybe have like an external display. So it gives you more options, especially like if you're on the go. You don't really need to have like a docking station. You can literally just connect the cables to it, use like a Bluetooth controller to it, and you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, nonetheless, I now have a Ally X, and one of the things I'm going to do is upgrade storage. And if you're wondering about the storage I'm getting, or I'm going to install, I'm going to be installing one of these 4 terabytes Western Digital Blacks, SN 850X. So I'm going to replace the 1 terabyte to this 4 terabyte. And I'm probably going to do that before I actually install or boot it up for the first time. So that's probably going to be the first thing I do. And if it's anything like the original ROG Ally, you can actually download the image for the Ally X to it directly from Asus and do like a new setup that way. So that's most likely what I'm going to do. Another thing is too, before I end the video, this has 24 gigs of RAM now versus the original at 16. And the RAM speed on this one is actually a little bit faster too. One of the things that, even though I've enjoyed using the original ROG Ally, it's always had that hitching issue. And that's because it runs Windows. And, you know, it's a pro and con with this thing. The pro is that because it is basically a full Windows computer, you can basically install anything that's compatible with Windows. The downside is you're running Windows. So, you know, if you run into like any of the Windows quirks, you're going to have the same issues on here. So that is something to keep in mind. You know, if you do want something a little more simple, but you don't really care about having the full compatibility of Windows, maybe the Steam Deck is just going to be a better option. However, I have this now, and being that the original ROG Ally, I installed a 2 terabyte drive in this. Most likely what I'm going to end up doing is putting the original drive back in here. Then I'm going to sell this off and take the 2 terabyte and install into my Steam Deck. So that way I have 2 terabytes of storage on that thing instead of the 1 terabyte. So, and being that the Ally X uses the standard full-size SSD versus the smaller, what is it, like 2880 size, you know, the really small ones, there's more compatibility for it. And for the price, you're actually getting a better value on this. So a couple of things to note about that. So anyway, that's just my thoughts and first impressions on this. I'm going to go ahead and start messing with this and start enjoying it and all that fun stuff. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it. Like always, have a good one. Leave those comments down below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe if you're not subscribed. And like always, have a good one.